Okay. Welcome to the Northfield Township Board Candidates Forum. My name is Marta Larson, and I will be moderating this event. I would like to thank Living Water Church for allowing this forum to use their Zoom account, and Harrison Parker for operating the Zoom logistics. I'd also like to thank Northfield Township, the Northfield Township Area Library, the Northfield Township Senior Community Center, Northfield's Human Services, and the Whitmore Lake Public Schools for assisting with the publicity for this forum. This forum is for candidates for supervisor, clerk, and treasurer on the Northfield Township Board. All candidates are present. This is a neutral, nonpartisan forum designed to give Northfield Township voters the information they need in order to make informed choices. The candidates will be introduced in a moment. There are a few things I would like to bring to the audience's attention. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute for a closing statement. In between, I will ask questions that have primarily come from the community. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to questions. Candidates will respond to questions in a randomly selected order in groups by the office they seek. Candidates have not been given the questions in advance. As a candidate is speaking, they will be able to see a timer on their screen that will count down the amount of time they have remaining. At the end of a speaker's time, they will be permitted to complete their sentence, and then their microphone will be muted so that other candidates will have the opportunity to participate. At about the halfway point of the forum, a 5-minute break will be provided. In the interest of time, audience members will not be permitted to ask questions during the live event. Many have been active on local social media suggesting questions that might be asked, and that is primarily the source for the questions asked of the candidates tonight. Voters are encouraged to contact the candidates directly to ask further questions. Additional candidate information, including candidate email addresses, can be found at www.vote411.org. This forum is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on local social media following the event. So we're going to start with candidate opening statements, and these are in descending alphabetical order. So the first person to speak will be Ken Dignan, a Republican candidate for supervisor.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Dignan, a longtime resident of Northfield Township. I'm running for township supervisor because over the last 20 years, we've seen a lot of divisiveness in our community, and I believe I can lead us forward in really bringing the community together. I'm a big supporter of businesses. Having been a business owner myself, I believe that we need to adhere to the master plan and support it. There are a lot of issues that are right at the forefront. We're just getting to the point where we can start developing our park, and that's really important to myself. And connecting our community, making Northfield Township a walkable, safe community is very important to me. I also believe that the things we should be doing should be enhancing the quality of life for those of us that are here and have been paying taxes over the last 20 years. Thank you, and I'd appreciate your support.
The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley, who is a Republican candidate for clerk.
Hello, thank you, Marta. Thank you, Harrison, for putting this on. And again, I am Kathleen Manley. I'm the incumbent clerk, Republican. I've been in Northfield for 13 years. Experience as a clerk. I have financial experience, management experience. I work in a neighboring local government, so I have government experience. And I'm running again basically because the clerk's office is running great and smooth. This board has gotten a lot done, and I want to be part of finishing the projects that we've started and add more to that list and get Northfield moving.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisgen, a Green candidate, party candidate for clerk.
Thank you. Good evening, Northfield Township. My name is Marissa Prisgen, and I'm asking for your vote as the next clerk. A minute isn't very long, so if you want to look at my platform or my experience, you can check out my Facebook page. It's Marissa Prisgen for clerk, or as Marta said, vote411.org. I'm running for office because I've spent the last 2 years attending board meetings and have at times been quite critical of some of the current board members' performance. So throwing my name in the hat is my way of putting my money where my mouth is. It's more than that too. I feel compelled to run because Northfield Township, we need champions, and we need them now more than ever. I'm a devoted member of the Green Party, and I want to point out what a unique opportunity voters have to elect a third-party candidate to the local board. Doing so will help normalize all third parties and break down the walls constructed by the two-party system, making us believe that we only ever have two choices. We all know real substantive change always starts at the grassroots level, so I'm honored and excited to represent not only the Green Party, but Northfield Township on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be L.J. Walter, a Democratic candidate for supervisor.
My name's LJ Walter. I'm running for Township Supervisor for Northfield Township. I've been a Whitmore Lake resident since August of 2018. I originally grew up on the East Coast in a small town pretty similar to Northfield. I then relocated to Baltimore where I graduated from college in 2009 with a degree in electronic media. I'm running for supervisor because I want to be involved in the process of making our town a greater place to live. Because I live here, it gives me a vested interest in seeing the area do well. I want to head up this new board, and I want to really run our board meetings and make sure the business is actually getting done. And I think in this role, I'd be a great asset to the township. If anybody watching needs information on how to vote in this election, please visit michigan.gov/vote. Thank you to Marta and Living Water Church for holding this presentation. I appreciate the invitation to further speak to the township this evening and answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak, a Republican candidate for treasurer.
Good evening. My name is Lenore Zelenak. I am rerunning for treasurer. First, I would like to thank everyone who voted for me in the primary. I appreciate your vote. I'm asking for your vote in the general election. Even though I may not have anybody running against me, it still would be an honor to receive your votes. I'm uniquely qualified for this job. One, I am currently your treasurer and have made improvements. I also have 30 years of experience with Ford Finance. I will use that experience to continue to make smart financial decisions. People that have seen me work over the last 4 years or know me for my lifetime know that I am open-minded. I base my decisions on fact. I want to hear what the public has to say because I represent you. My husband and I have been here 26 great years. Let's work together to move Northfield Township forward and continue to make it a better community. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question will be asked of the two candidates for supervisor. The question is, what is your understanding of the property assessment process and your role in it? And the first person to speak will be L.J. Walter.
Thanks, Marta. In terms of the supervisor's role for as the role of the assessor, it is part of the description from the MTA that the supervisor is essentially the chief assessor unless they're qualified and certified to do so. I think we addressed this a little bit before. Sorry. I'm not a certified assessor. I in no way am qualified to do so. So that's something that I'd be delegating to a deputy, as is the responsibility of the supervisor if they don't have those credentials. So I would be delegating that to somebody who is trustworthy and certified to do so. That's the best way to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Ken Dignan.
Certainly.
Same
So,
question.
thank you. The role of assessing is a very important role, and overseeing that is the responsibility of the supervisor, even when it is done so by a hired assessor that the board hires. That is how it is done here in Northfield Township under the current supervisor and would continue that way. But also in that same process, the Board of Review comes into play. And with the Board of Review, it is the Township Supervisor that serves as the recording secretary for the Board of Review and also brings forth candidates to be considered for appointment to the Board of Review. Board of Review, if you do not know, is where you appeal if you have a concern about your property tax assessment. And you bring that forth. It is an important aspect of it, and it's important that we ensure that the people that are appointed to that are qualified and look at things in a way that benefits the community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be for the candidate for treasurer. The question is, What are your expectations for township board members' review of financial reports, budgets, and fund management reports? And the candidate will be Lenore Zelenak answering that question.
So the number one duty for all of the board members of the trustee is the fiduciary health of the township. We do provide several reports for the board members to look at, and we provide them in different ways. We have a summary report, and then we have the detail behind that summary report, and we provide graphs. We also provide the open bills before we pay them. I ask that all board members look at them, ask us questions so that we can make sure we can get the answers and we have the information that is needed to protect the township assets, because that is our number one goal as board members, is to protect the health of the township as well as the safety of the individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is for the candidates for clerk. The question is, what are the most important things you need to know in order to correctly administer an election? And the first candidate to answer will be Marissa Prisgent.
Thank you. So the first thing that you need to know to properly administer election is that you are going to have to be certified. Anybody who is elected as a clerk in the state of Michigan has to attend a mandatory training that will provide all of the knowledge that you need to know. Fortunately, a lot of that information coincides with the duties of an election inspector. So a lot of the things I know already are that anytime there is any kind of dispute or anybody needs help at the polls, one person from each major party has to assist to help keep things fair and kind of provide that extra oversight. I learned a lot of the things that go on the floor, and I'm looking forward to learning what goes on the clerk's end in the back, along with the election specialist hired by the town.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
So many things to know, for the election, like Marissa said, definitely need to go through the training, through the process. And a lot of it is hands-on, organization, just keeping up to date on all the facts, keeping up to date on the computer system. There's so many back-end processes that go into the election that, the people out front aren't aware of. And like I said, organization is key, having the right people in place, both back office and on the election floor that day, having great chairpersons. Just organization is a huge part of it. Honesty, and like I said, just keeping up with all the changes that are going and still ongoing, especially this election.
Thank you. The next question will be directed at the candidate for treasurer. And this question is, what perspective should the treasurer bring to board discussions on projects and policies? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
The perspective that the treasurer and I bring is to make sure we have sufficient detail to make a decision. As well as I had mentioned before, I think it's important to have a summary. We need to have the detail behind that summary, and also whoever's bringing it to the board, we should make sure that we have a recommendation. We need to know the cost benefits of these decisions that we make. And that's what I have been trying to implement in my 4 years. We have made some headway, and we still have some improvements to make. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be asked to candidates for clerk. The question is, what strategies do you intend to use to assemble and disseminate information to relevant audiences? And the first candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Wow, that's interesting. Yes, we definitely need to work on communication in the township. We need to upgrade our website, which we've been trying to get going for at least 4 years. And hopefully it's in the process. With social media, getting newsletters out there, emails, so just getting the correct information from the correct sources we need to get out there. And I think the website is, a huge thing that needs to get done the right way.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisgent.
Thank you. So this is a big issue for me, and I think that communication has improved a lot over the last several years, and I like a lot of the new newsletters that are coming out and the way that multiple mediums are being used to communicate. I do think there is still a lot of room for improvement. Now, a few months back, before the pandemic started, the board had begun to work on a communication policy that would dictate when information was given to the public and why and how that was going to be delivered. And it kind of just fell off and got dropped. So I'd really like to see that get picked back up so that the public knows exactly when they're going to receive communication from the board. To enrich that, I would like to see all of the content from the board becoming branded, as well as using multiple outlets such as social media to communicate.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidates for supervisor. The question is, what would be your role in promoting Northfield Township? And the first candidate to speak will be Ken Dignan.
Thank you, Marta. Well, I mean, one of the things that I've said is every elected member of the township board needs to be a business development officer for the township. And when I say that, I mean, you need to be acutely aware of the challenges that the township is facing, the possibilities that are available out there at the township, have a good business relationship with the businesses in the township, and be able to speak to those things. But the township supervisor, I believe, also plays a role that takes all those things and packages them together to work with the township manager to just have that conscious awareness of what's going on. Is a business growing and expanding a little bit? If they are, and you know about a property that might be available that they might fit into, you know, to help to piece that together, get it to the township manager, get it to the planner, bring it to the board. The township supervisor really needs to lead, and they can do that not only there, but on the board, at the board meetings as well when running the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
I think I may have interpreted the question a little bit differently. In terms of promoting the township, I assumed that there's something to do with, you know, trying to get us out there, people to really know about us. I think it was actually Milton Hershey that said the best advertising is quality. Yeah, how do I promote Northfield Township? By making it better, by looking at things about the township that if I were trying to move here, trying to just spend time here, what would I be looking for? Those are the things that you focus on, things that people, you know, who are considering maybe opening a business here, starting a family here, what would they be looking for and how can we deliver that to them? Obviously, the supervisor is just one part of a much larger puzzle on the board, but at least, you know, from a advisory or from a leadership standpoint, you can try to nudge the board in the direction that, you know, at least tries to develop the township into something that you can promote, that you can show off to people when you're out and about. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question will go to candidates for clerk. What is your expectation of communication and interaction with the township manager? And the first person to speak will be Marissa Priscient.
Okay, so the township manager should be like a very savvy CEO. He or she should be the professional that's hired to run the show in lieu of full-time positions for the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer. It saves township money. It allows us to operate at a higher level. So I expect our township manager to communicate with me in a thorough, expedient manner. So when the township board gets the packet, it should include an executive memo on the front page telling me what I'm reading, telling me what I should hope to gain out of it, and perhaps an opinion or a summary on it so that I have the information that I need to make thorough and expedient decisions based on the township manager's knowledge of the information being presented. So I expect the communication to be constant and thorough. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
So yes, from the manager, I'm going to kind of piggyback what Marissa says. Anything that the township manager gets to us needs to be thorough, complete, have his opinion on it. I mean, he's a professional. We should, have what he thinks is going on. There needs to be open communication with the staff, not just the board members. There needs to be open dialogue with his direct staff members and what's going on at the office, what happens at the board meetings. It needs to be two-way conversation. If questions are asked to the manager, they need to be answered in a precise manner, in a direct manner. If we send him ideas, questions, they need to be responded to in a professional manner. And just that open communication and professional communication.
Thank you. Kathy, I sent you a private chat. I guess you haven't seen it. Do you happen to have headphones? Because your sound is pretty garbled.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not gonna belabor that, but you can try to figure out if there's any way you can do anything about that. The next question will go to candidates for supervisor. The question is, how do you view the supervisor's authority to make decisions about the township in response to requests from citizens and business owners? And the first candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Well, the supervisor, how do I put this? The supervisor is the legal agent of the township. So when you're talking about doing things as a township, really you're the person providing those signatures, but at the same time, you can't unilaterally act as a supervisor. You can provide leadership, you can try to work with the people on the board, but you are one part of a 7-person team. The best thing to do, which I think we haven't seen a lot of in the past, we've seen a lot more unilateral action than we would probably like to. Start a dialogue with the people that you work with. Actually get involved with your team and start the interior machinations to actually get something in front of the board and something that you can actually vote on and that's actionable. The supervisor themselves really can't just do that themselves. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Interesting. I've served in a leadership role in this fashion for a number of years on the Board of Education. But, and when I say that is you're 1/7 of the board, you're 1/7 of the authority. You do have to be a consensus builder. You do have to work with everybody on the board. You do have to communicate information and help to provide as much information as possible so that when decisions are being made, they're being made in a way that each member of your board is confident. With that builds trust, and with that trust, the board then allows the individual as a supervisor to then take certain actions that help to advance things at the township level. But to address things at the citizen level, each of us is an elected official. Each of us has the authority to bring forward an issue that a resident may raise to us. That issue should be raised to the board. The board, when necessary, should make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be addressed to the candidate for treasurer. And this is question number 3. So how should the treasurer effectively manage the general and personal property tax administration process? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
So could you read that one more time? The general
I'd be happy to read it.
Yeah,
How should the treasurer effectively manage the general and personal property tax administration process?
we should effectively manage it according to the law. We should make sure our tax bills are out on time, which is July 1st and December 1st. We need to collect it on time and apply the interest and penalty as directed. And that's what I do, is collect the personal property tax according to the statute. Sometimes people do come in and ask, if something can be waived. I do not do that. Sometimes it can break your heart, the stories you hear, but we have to treat everybody the same, and there are rules and laws that we must follow. The personal property taxes, we get more involved. We collect them as we would on general property. It's when they become delinquent. They are retained within the township on the personal property, where the delinquent real property goes to the county.
Thank you. The next question will be addressed to the candidates for supervisor. The question is, how do you plan to manage board meetings so that members of the public feel heard and board business can be conducted efficiently? And the first candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Excellent. Well, with respect is the first and foremost item. The public wants to be heard and wants to be listened to in a way that is respectful and considerate. Each of the member of the public have an opportunity to speak twice at a board meeting and to be acknowledged, and the board itself hears what the individual has to say is very important. At the same time, the supervisor putting forth the agenda has an obligation to continue to keep business moving forward, and that's an important element. You have to stay on task. You have to move agenda items through the process, and you have to be respectful. You ask your board members to be considerate of one another, and you lead the way. I think I've shown that throughout the school and the township at meetings I've led in the past. Thank you.
Next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
This is actually a fun question. Even though my resume is not quite as extensive as Ken's, there is a little bit of experience that I have here in this avenue. Actually, when I was in school, when I was in college, I was on my fraternity's executive board. And then after graduation, I actually served on the alumni board and actually ran a lot of meetings. So the answer to the question, practice adherence to parliamentary procedure. There's a lot of instances I've seen on recent meetings where motions are thrown around left and right. Are we inside this motion? Are we doing something else? Just trying to have as practical a grasp on parliamentary procedure as possible, and then actually adhering to it so that business can actually get from point A to point B on the board, I think is probably the most important aspect of that question. And I would be happy to develop those talents and become as much of an expert as humanly possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. The question is, what is your expectation of communication and interaction with the township manager? And the candidate speaking will be Lenore Zelenak.
My expectation is high. The township manager is the person responsible to give us the information we need to make decisions. I expect him to give us, at this point in time, a summary. I expect him to give us his recommendations. I'd like to see a cost benefit. I'd like to see if it's a budget item, what budget is it coming out of. And I do go into the office 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do reach out to him. If I have some concerns on the packet, I will reach out to him to let him know my concerns and try to get answers resolved. I also will try to tell him and communicate with him the information that I need to make a decision. I know I'm only 1 member on the board out of 7. My goal is always to try to vote yes for decision or items put before me if it's practical and I have the proper detail.
Thank you. The next question will be for the candidates for clerk. What is your understanding of sources for getting grants and the restrictions and requirements that come along with grant funding? And the first candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
As far as grants, there's many sources for those, private grants, government grants. There's CARES grants out there right now. So the possibilities of grants are, endless. And some of them require, funding from the township, a percentage to go in. Some of them don't. So I think we definitely are missing the opportunity, to apply for grants. We need somebody in the office to do that for us. And, we've researched them, we find them out. We've had a couple grants going on right now that people have, applied for and we've gotten. So definitely an opportunity out there from various sources that we need to tap into those funds.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisjand.
Can you repeat the question for me?
I can. What is your understanding of sources for getting grants and the restrictions and requirements that come along with grant funding?
Okay, so obviously, grants can come from anywhere. New grants are always popping up. I know the Barker Road Playpath was funded by a grant, and there are some funds going to the senior center to fix the parking lot that came from another grant. I'm by no means a grant expert, but what I do know is that no one that I know of in the township is actively seeking which ones we could possibly be eligible for. What I also know is that most grants require some sort of kickback or some sort of investment from the township. It's not usually just free money. It usually requires the board to agree that investing the taxpayers' money to match a grant or to invest in that cause is worthwhile to the voters and to the taxpayer. So I think it's important to realize that grants aren't always free. It would be nice if we had a full-time person, maybe the manager or someone in his department to research and find more grants to bring to the board for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. The board is not always going to agree on everything. If you don't agree with a board decision, but the project has to be implemented, how will you manage this? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
You are correct. The board does not agree on everything. My position is, though, once the board has made a decision, as a board member, I will do my best ability to implement that decision to the fullest, because I feel that is my job, is to implement decisions made by the board, even though I may not agree with them. I just do want to make sure they have the proper information, and I will do what I need to ensure the decision is implemented to the best it can be, because I think that's my job. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to candidates for clerk. What is your position on the need for development in the township, and what type of development would you support? And the first candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisgent.
Sure. So development or growth. I've only been here for 6 years, and it seems like those are like dirty words around here. Like there's this weird stigma that comes with growth and development. And I don't think it has to be that way. I've taken several looks at the zoning maps, and I actually think that there's a lot of room for good, healthy, responsible development in commercial and residential in the areas where it's already zoned to occur. I don't see any reason that we can't focus our energies on promoting and allowing development to occur in those areas, while at the same time trying to preserve the rural charm that is the surrounding agricultural district. So my position on growth and development is, if it's legal and it fits the master plan and the zoning, then bring it in and let's do it. And at the same time, I think it's really important that we preserve our rural character as well.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
We do have the opportunity for growth, both residential and in commercial in the downtown district. And we have a great master plan. We just need to follow the master plan. And we really need somebody out there promoting us, someone who knows the plan, who knows the rules, to get out there and promote us, to get Northfield Township on the map. And we have many great opportunities. We're just missing them again because there's no one in place to actually do that job. So hopefully that's something that we can work on in the future. And, we can keep the rural character, and we can, get the businesses and homes in here. Just follow the plan that's in place.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidates for supervisor. What is your expectation of communication and interaction with the township manager? And the first candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
I expect extensive communication. I mean, the township manager is arguably the most powerful person in this township, along with being the most highly paid person in this township. So, yeah, I expect a great deal of communication. We've had candidates touch on this in these events. The fact that the township supervisor doesn't really seem to always provide a lot in terms of documentation, in terms of transparency. As supervisor, that will be one of my things that I'd be a big stickler about. I'd be wanting to hear updates. If there's, simple things that are happening down the street, a neighbor dispute, any kind of thing that's going off the rails. I mean, I want to know about it. I want the board to know about it, even if it's something that, we can't, again, unilaterally handle ourselves. I think it's important that the manager provides as much information about what's happening in the township to the board and all the elected officials as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Yeah, I think the township manager and township supervisor need to be a very cohesive relationship. I mean, daily conversations that need to take place. I have the innate ability to be available at any time virtually throughout the day due to the nature of my work. And the relationship between the township manager and the supervisor are what can make things happen, make them successful, make them prosper in this community. There's a historical perspective that I can bring to the picture that the township manager may not be aware of. As many of us who have been here for a long time might have that historical perspective that even other board members may not have. But that relationship between the township manager and the supervisor is absolutely critical to us improving and making Northfield Township move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to candidates for clerk. The board is not always going to agree on everything. If you don't agree with a board decision, but the project has to be implemented, how will you manage this? And the first candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Yes, I mean, with this board, we clearly didn't agree on many things, but things still did move forward no matter which way your vote went. And if that's the board's decision, you need to respect that. And again, you need to implement it. If you have any involvement in it, you have to be totally involved in it, whether your vote went either way. You still need to have the participation, and you need to support the decision because the decision came from the board. Again, you're one vote in 7. So you just support your board in any way that you can.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisden.
Yeah, so I think there's more to this question here. I think it's important when the board makes a decision that you abide by that in every way as a representative for the township. If the board passes an ordinance and you don't agree with it, I don't think that you should go out as a private citizen and be a part of a petition. I think that as a board member, you should respect the decision made by the board in the first place. Furthermore, I just think that a lot of times this board hasn't agreed on things I think could have been avoided by some discussion up front and by a better job by the township manager to communicate all of the information up front. It seems like sometimes the current board couldn't even agree on what facts were facts. So I certainly think that if I disagree with the board, if I'm on the minority, I will absolutely abide by that choice at every turn. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidates for supervisor. What do you think about the need to have a township police department, and specifically your thoughts about the Northfield Township Police Department? The first candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Well, the Northfield Township Police Department has done a stellar job. I have to commend the officers and our public safety director. They are, spot on with taking care of things in the community. I have had the unique opportunity of being a part of an organization that's interacted with them regularly, and that is the school system. A local police department such as the Northfield Township Police Department is absolutely critical to a school district. A small school district like Whitmore Lake depends heavily on the communication between its public safety, police department, and the school. And that's not just for safety, but it's for positive outcomes. And our police department has been there every step of the way to deliver and help in any way possible to help kids to reach positive outcomes. And I've seen that same kind of caring and compassion in the things that they do every day. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Yeah, of course. Everybody needs a police force without question. As 10,000 people here, someone needs to look after them. I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had to have too awful much interaction with our police department, but in in my experience over the past year or two, just trying to stay involved with what's going on in the township, one thing that's jumped out at me very often is just how vehemently this township supports their police department. Everyone knows the officers, everyone knows Chief Wagner. I've lived many places and I've never seen that kind of involvement and that kind of support. So without question, they're doing something right, and definitely we need to have them around without question.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. What is your position on the need for development in the township, and what type of development would you support? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
During this term, the board updated the master plan. I think the master plan is fantastic. We have gotten input from the people on the master plan, and it provides for development as well as preservation. I think a board that does both that will succeed. I always call it like the bloomin' onion. You know, we bloom from the center and then we would bloom out. We want to develop close to the services. Certainly to say our downtown is ripe for development, and I look forward to see some things happening downtown, especially with the park, as well as some new businesses coming in. Certainly North Territorial is there and available, and I see that more property is up for sale. And again, I think planning is key to success. We have a good plan. We need now go forth and implement that plan. And when someone comes in, we need to make sure they're aware of the plan and are developing according to the plan.
Thank you. The next question will be asked to the candidates for supervisor. What is your understanding of sources for getting grants and the restrictions and requirements that come along with grant funding? And the first candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
If I'm being completely frank, this is not my strongest suit. I would hope that my particular talent for research would treat me well here, as I would be obviously looking for an appropriate grant for anything that might pop up. I mean, we've sort of agreed on a number of different topics: creating a walkable community, trying to create a good lakefront space that's good for the public. I mean, these are all things that are fairly specific. So I would be really relying on my research ability to go out and to try to find these things. Off the top of my head, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot. Thanks.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. So there are obviously a tremendous number of grant opportunities out there. One of the things that you've got to have, though, if you're going to go after grant money, you've got to have a very strong individual that has a desire and passion to work with and move forward with getting a grant. We were fortunate enough in the township to have that individual at the school that helped to write the grant for the play path along Barker Road, and worked closely with the township to make that happen. At the same time, the board needs to be behind going after grants. And that means sometimes putting money where your mouth is. That means there are going to be opportunities where you're going to have to match that. I would like to see us encourage the Land Preservation Committee and the Parks and Recreation Committee look for grants and let us know about those grants and how they intend to go after them. Then we can support that. That's my position on grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. What do you think about the need to have a township police department, and specifically your thoughts about the Northfield Township Police Department? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
I'm very grateful for our men and women that serve in our police department. I'm certainly grateful for Chief Wagner, our public safety director. He's a longtime resident, brings a lot to the position. Time and time again, the people of this township have supported our police department. I also support our police department. You see some of, like during COVID, it went seamlessly as far as I'm concerned in the township. Our police department was right on top of things. Our especially public safety director, Mr. Wagner, you saw like the birthday parades that they would do to bring a little bit of hope to people in desperation that you don't always think that maybe a police officer would provide. You see them reaching out to the schools. I think that with mental health, they're trying to reach out and maybe improve the conditions if they can possibly help people, as opposed to just throwing people in jail where that's not where they need to go.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidates for clerk. What do you think about the need to have a township police department, and specifically your thoughts about the Northfield Township Police Department? And the first candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisjant.
Thank you. This is an interesting question. Of course, we need a police department. And I'm actually really, really fond of the Northfield Township Police Department myself and Chief Wagner. I think he's an exceptional human being and he's built an exceptional department. So we're all very, very lucky for that. I would like to see and support the continued training and relationships that are going on between Chief Wagner and the department, and some of the urban training programs that they've been participating in the past. I would like to see that kind of training continued. And I think it's really important that we support our police department. We also need to support their continued education and training as the climate in our country is changing. I think that it's important for us to support them in a way that allows them to continue to receive the training that they need to keep doing the good job that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Yeah, not much left to say on this one. Definitely support the police department wholeheartedly. Chief Wagner, being the public safety director, has been awesome, is very informative to the board, communicates great with the board. Again, with COVID, he headed that up, kept the township safe, got the employees all the information they needed, and again, is still just keeping them safe. We definitely need, again, to support the police department, to get them the training that they need. And, that's what Chief Wagner does. He ensures the training, ensures that, people are doing what they should be doing. And again, just wholeheartedly support the police department.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. What is your understanding of sources for getting grants and the restrictions and requirements that come along with grant funding? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
So during our administration, we got a SAW grant, which was for the wastewater treatment. That was worth about $500,000. We did a non-motorized path, again, that was worth about $220,000. And we did the Kaboom grant. I think that might have been worth, I can't remember if it was around $50,000, might have been more than that. And with grants, you do have to participate in them. I do know that also with grant, they are quite stringent, meaning there is a lot of data that needs to be provided. There is a lot of paperwork. So when you consider a grant, you must also consider that part of the grant as well. I do think there's a lot of grants out there, and it would be good if we got a list with things that we want to do with the community park, with non-motorized paths, with sidewalks. And it might behoove us to actually go and hire someone, depending on the amount of grants that are available, to go and get those grants.
Thank you. The next question will be for the candidates for clerk. Do you feel the township should set up a fast track for new businesses coming into the community? And if so, what should be the components of the fast track? And the first candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Yeah, as far as a fast track, I don't know if they're necessarily, would be what they would call a fast track. There definitely needs to be something put in order, put in place, a checklist of what people need, what the process is, who to talk to, what paperwork to bring in. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue. I know back even when Howard was here, when I worked at the township, Howard and I were trying to come up with this. So this has been a long thing coming that hasn't gotten done yet. So just your basic things. I don't know if you would call it a fast track, but just an orderly process of what people need to do and what businesses need to do and who they need to talk to. It shouldn't be that complicated of a process.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisjant.
Thank you. I also am not a fan of the term fast track. I think that kind of implies that we're going to be skipping steps or giving preferential treatment to one person over the other. And obviously we know that isn't the case. So I think maybe what we could do is streamline the process. Actually, I have a lot of experience in that area. It might be something that I could join a subcommittee and help. Obviously, as clerk, it would not be my direct responsibility to coordinate the building department, but as a board member, I would certainly be willing to lend my expertise in instructional design to help lay out that process. Now, if the building department itself needs to be reorganized, that would have to happen first, but I think a detailed documentation would be, for both the investor and for the building department, would be definitely a step in the right direction, along with just treating our investors like valued guests when they come through and not making things bothersome for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate, or next question will go to candidates for supervisor. The board is not always going to agree on everything. If you don't agree with a board decision, but the project has to be implemented, how will you manage this? And the first candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you again, Marta. So when the board makes a decision, you are 1/7 of that decision. It doesn't matter whether it is a 4-3 vote or if it is a 7-0 vote. It is the decision of the governing body of the township. When it is that definitive decision, you don't have, you don't have to bury your vote, but you do have to be supportive of the movement forward. It is important that you don't go out and undermine the decision of the board just because you didn't like that decision. You have to go out, you have to be supportive, you have to make sure it's done in the best possible way, you have to make sure that it's done professionally, and you have to move on from that issue. That issue is settled, and you can't go out and make it a issue to, I'll let it go there.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Yeah, Ken is 110% correct in this. As supervisor, I would really hope that once something gets to the board for a vote is not the first time that I'm hearing about it. I would imagine that, there's been a little bit of back and forth amongst the people who are already on the board, and there's already been a little bit of conversation about it. I think you do your due diligence. I think you do everything you can. And then once it comes to a vote, that's it. The board speaks, there's a vote, it's written in stone, and from that point, you just get over it and move on with your job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will go to candidates for clerk. What are the requirements to become a certified election official? Do you or could you meet these requirements? And the first candidate to speak will be Marissa Prisjan.
Yes, absolutely, I can meet those requirements. So there is an election accreditation that you have to receive from the state. It will be paid for. I don't see any reason why I could not meet those requirements. I passed the training for election inspector and was able to fulfill that job. I also am a quick learner and able to absorb information, so I'm confident that any certification that's necessary to perform the job I could absolutely do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Whoops, start talking too early. Yes, definitely the certification is, it's an earned person training, online training done through the state. There's constant updates online through the state. So yeah, the certification, is not, very complicated to get. The office staff, is also certified. So, there's not an issue doing that program. There, was some slowdowns this year, of course, with COVID. Not everything was offered in person, but definitely online training is, what the state is doing right now with the different election processes.
Thank you. Next question will go to candidates for supervisor. What is your position on the need for development in the township, and what type of development do you support? And the first candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
I support development. I support commercial development. I support residential development. I do think that you can do these things without, the specter of development on this township is that there'll be no more green space and everything will just be brick and mortar, and you can't tear it back down once it's done. I don't think that that's necessarily realistic. I think that you can develop and you can try to keep it within norms. One of the things that I would really look forward to looking into and researching as supervisor would be, what kind of services do we want here, and what kind of population do those services or would warrant those kind of services. So if 10,000 people aren't enough to get good broadband, what is it, 15,000? Do we need 5,000 homes? Do we need 5,000 people? Do you need X amount of customers for an internet service provider? Looking at those things would be a good way to sort of tamp down what you would call rampant development, but I absolutely support it.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
All right. Well, certainly support certain types of development. The township should not be in the business of developing, though. We can support development, make sure that when builders come in, things are streamlined, predictable, that we work in a 21st century way, not a 20th century way. We're not sending out mails, we're sending out email instead, or phone calls. With that being said, we need to make this community desirable. If we enhance things in this community to make this community one that people want to live in, want to be in, want to stay here, want to grow their families here, that will lead to appropriate growth. I don't want to be the one as a township speculating for millions of dollars of investments. That is not our role. If someone wants to come in and make a proposed development, it needs to be consistent with our master plan. They need to then bring forth their plans and we will evaluate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is for the candidate for treasurer. Do you feel the township should set up a fast track for new businesses coming into the community? And if so, what should be the components of the fast track? And the candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
So I think we need to again, develop according to our master plan, and we need to provide guidelines and assistance to people coming into the township. We have talked about that we need to update the checklist to make sure it meets what McKenna wants as opposed to what Carlisle Wortman had. We need to make sure our application process is updated with the appropriate zoning. So there is some updates that we need to do. I think we need to give the applicants timeframes. If you turn in your site plan on such and such a day, you will expect to hear from us within a week. And we need to make sure those timeframes are standard, meaning what are other townships doing? Sometimes I feel the process right now, people get lost. You don't hear back. We need to communicate to these people, to the applicants constantly to let them know where they are in the process.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to give the candidates a 5-minute break. And so Harrison's going to put up a 5-minute timer and everyone will be back and ready to go in 5 minutes. Okay, I think we're all back from our break. The candidates are here. So we're going to go on to the next question. The next question will be for candidates for supervisor. The question is, do you think the township should set up a fast track for new businesses coming into the community? And if so, what should be the components of the fast track? And the first candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thanks for the question. The first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of endless billings from these big name planning firms. We've got our plans, we have our ordinances, they're written, they're in place. I would explore immediately looking at the potential for bringing an in-house planner onto the staff. With that, as I said before, we'd streamline, we'd make sure they're predictable. We'd use 21st century technology to make sure we're leveraging communication with people who are coming into the township. That in-house planner would be tasked with those responsibilities and working with these individuals. Before they come to the Planning Commission, those items that would be on a list of things to be addressed should be worked on and addressed with the in-house planner. And then if we have a big project that's much larger, we could consider going outside to a bigger firm on a project-based basis. That would streamline things a tremendous amount. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Yeah, I would echo what the young ladies for clerk were saying earlier. I don't like the term fast track. I don't like the idea of skipping steps. I don't necessarily like the idea of bringing on extra staff to handle it either. I think that Ken's definitely right that we should be being more efficient in terms of our communication. We should be leveraging newer technologies and not kind of trying to do things as old school as possible. I do think that we're not very business friendly. I think we could definitely revamp that, but I don't necessarily know about trying to reinvent the wheel either. There'd probably have to be some kind of a middle ground. But I definitely do believe that we're not very business friendly, and I would definitely hope that we could. I like streamline. I definitely like streamline versus fast track. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate, the next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. As an individual, what activities have you been involved in that are for the betterment of this whole community? And the candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
I'm a member of Kiwanis and have been for 14 years. I'm also on the board of Northfield Human Services, as well as People's Express, that provides services to our community that is needed. We are also looking at potentially trying to bring in some health clinic and healthcare for our community as well. I am your treasurer. I do participate in activities within the township that are very enjoyable and fun. Trunk or treat. They just had the cornhole, watched all the people there. Worked on the play path quite extensively, just working to improve our community, volunteering to make it even a better place to live.
Thank you. The next question will be for the candidates for clerk. How should the clerk and treasurer work together in managing the accounting and accounts payable functions of the township? And the first candidate to answer will be Kathleen Manley.
The clerk and treasurer definitely work together on those, the two departments. And I mean, we're both signers on checks, both the deputy and the township manager assistant. You know, they do a lot of that part of the job, and just, you know, the communication and trusting each other and making sure that they're done, following up on things. And just, you know, just the constant communication with each other.
Okay, thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Marissa President.
I'm going to go ahead and pretend that you asked that question to also include the supervisor, because I think that it's important for all three to work together. the supervisor, the clerk, and the treasurer. Now, obviously, all three have statutory duties that are mostly delegated to their deputy or to the assessor in the supervisor's case. But it's important that we stay in communication with each other, overseeing those departments, making sure that we're setting up similar expectations for those folks that work in our office, and making sure that the financial information coming from the deputy treasurer to the deputy clerk is getting recorded properly, and that we're keeping the supervisor and the rest of the board all looped in on that at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will be for the candidates for supervisor. As an individual, what activities have you been involved in that are for the betterment of this whole community? And the first candidate to respond will be LJ Walter.
In all truthfulness, not as many as I would love to. I was very much looking forward to getting more into volunteering and getting out into the community this year. Of course, immediately that was kind of dashed down, unfortunately, because of COVID. That being said, I was very active last year in the campaign against the marijuana referendum. I think that specifically is very valuable to our township. I think the fact that we're bringing businesses, and we've actually successfully began bringing businesses into this township, I think is paramount in terms of just trying to get foot traffic into town. In terms of, I mentioned at another time, sort of the catch-22 of not having people and also not having businesses. I think that's a great way to sort of break that cycle, is to bring in these businesses. And I was very, very involved in that process last year. And it was great. And it pretty much put me in the seat that I'm in front of you, fine people tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. I mean, I have a long laundry list. I've been here for 30 years. I think that's, when you look at this group of people here, we all, after that much time in a community, are going to have a list of things. Mine date all the way back to Friends of the Library, when we were doing walks to raise money prior to the acquisition of the Dodge House, which is now the Northfield Township Area Library, a gem in our community. I'm active with the Whitmore Lake Foundation for Educational Excellence when that was getting started, and even Cornhole, which was in Lenore mentioned. On the Whitmore Lake, we helped with Whitmore Lake Community Scholarship funds. I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals for years, the Planning Commission. I was on there for a few years. I've been on the Board of Ed for 8 years, involved at Living Water Church. I was an elder there and in various capacities, dating back to the old 4th of July committees way back when we also had Winterfest. So I've been very active in the community. Thank you.
The next question will go to the candidate for treasurer. How should the clerk and treasurer work together in managing the accounting and accounts payable functions of the township? And the candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
So we work together. The payables are presently initiated by the assistant to the township manager. Then they are given to the treasurer, the deputy treasurer, who looks and reviews them and is the first signer of the check. And then after we sign it, it goes to the clerk department for their signature as well. There's another form like the L4029, which is the taxing authority that we receive from the different entities, that is signed by the clerk and the supervisor. But we need that to collect the taxes for the township, as well as the police and the fire that we do. So as a whole, because we are a small township, a small staff, everybody works with everybody in the township or in the office. We have a close relationship, the Treasury Department, with the assessing to get the warrant to go collect the taxes. So we all work very well together and get the job done.
Thank you. The next question will go to the candidates for clerk. What is your plan for assuring that the communication and noticing needs of the township are met? And the first candidate to respond will be Marissa Prisjant.
Okay, so this kind of ties into a little bit of what we were discussing earlier. So over time, the board makes motions and the board creates policies that kind of dictate when these kind of things take places, and they're recorded, but they're not recorded in an organized place. So the first place I would start is by consolidating and kind of cataloging the minutes in a way that allows us to have a clear-cut list of communication policies in one easy-to-read place. Again, that communication plan needs to be worked out so that the township board can communicate to the public when they will communicate something to them, how they will communicate it to them. And from there, I think that execution is the most important thing. So anytime something comes up, we need to figure out, coordinate. The clerk's department should be in charge of creating that communication and making sure that it's as clear as possible to get to the voters and to the taxpayers so that they know exactly what it is we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
Yeah, I agree. That question kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, the website definitely needs to get updated, needs some organization. Currently now the manager's assistant is in charge of the communications and getting the minutes out. That should come back to the clerk's department. So there needs to be some kind of reorganization, you know, within the township as a whole. And once that happens, the organization within the minutes and the communications and the paperwork coming in, that all needs to get reorganized also. So there's many deeper things that go into that. But again, the website, you know, the social media, the emails, that all needs to be done in the correct fashion and, you know, in a timely fashion, organized fashion.
Thank you. The rest of the questions are going to be asked of all the candidates. We're going to continue to go in order by office just because that's the way I have my cheat sheet here spread out. But I'm going to ask one question, and then each of the 5 candidates is going to have a shot at it. So the first question is, how should the township interact with other community agencies? And the first candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
I think we need to be integrated with the other agencies. We need to be involved with Sparks. We need to be involved with Washtenaw County. We need to be involved with the Huron Watershed and the Huron. All the different memberships that we have is very important, and we need to be actively involved. I think you can learn from the different organizations. You get our township out within these different organizations, so they will promote us, be part of the Brighton Chamber, which we are. And I know being part of the Washtenaw County Treasury treasurers has really been helpful. We participate in that, and we learn a lot. We get our name out there, and it benefits the township as a whole. So I would say we want to be integrated, and we want to participate in these different memberships and organizations. So we are out in front and center.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
Yes, I agree. We definitely need to be involved in the different organizations that we already are signed up for that aren't, you know, actively participating in. Like Lenore said, there's already, you know, Treasurers Association, Clerks Association that, you know, those departments, you know, are involved in. You know, we have the Huron Valley Watershed. We have different, even communities, our neighboring communities. We can go to them for help in things. I mean, there needs to be a communication with our surrounding townships. We just need some leadership in the office to actually get actively involved and, you know, do these things. It's you know, not just talk, we need to actually do it.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Marissa Prisjan.
Can you repeat the question, Marta?
I can. How should the township interact with other community agencies?
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was agencies or departments. Everybody kind of went the agency route. So I think that it is important for us to stay in contact with as many different agencies as possible. I also think it's important for us to maybe delegate out some of this responsibility. Traditionally, it would be the supervisor's role to kind of oversee and mingle with the different organizations to find out what's going on with them, what we can do for each other. But I also think that the clerk, the treasurer, and the trustees we can divvy this work up and go out and say, just like the board appoints different board members to be a liaison to the different committees, such as the Land Preservation Committee and Parks and Rec, we could do this instead of, so that we're not just talking about, attending, but if I'm only assigned to one instead of expected to volunteer for 5 or 6, then, that becomes something we could all do. And then we could build and cultivate better relationships by each person bringing something back to the board, as opposed to us all kind of trying to keep up with everything.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. Certainly, various agencies. Gosh, there's so many. With COVID going on, obviously in Washtenaw County, but paying close attention to Washtenaw County Health Department. We are very fortunate in Washtenaw County, in Northfield, to have our Washtenaw County Commissioner that represents us be from our own community. So leveraging the relationship there to other agencies, Watts, and the Watts 2045 long-range plan, and especially as we look at non-motorized path stuff, what is that going to look like, and how much are we going to be involved in communicating with them? That's very important. With us being on the county line, some of that does go over into Livingston and Washtenaw County. While we're just in Washtenaw County, knowing what they're doing just north of us in Green Oak Township or Hamburg Township just west of us is very important. Agency communication is vital. Thank you.
Next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
This is actually one of the things that I'm looking most forward to, is just getting out. And I think anybody really who maybe has never served in the board or maybe newer to town might have the same issue that I had immediately when I heard this question, is knowing what agencies are out there. What are we supposed to be doing? Like Ken said, there's got to be a lot of them. One thing that I've really enjoyed during this whole political process that leads us here to tonight has been just really identifying exactly how much is out there. I've been really enjoying the MTA podcast. That's had a lot of really great resources, getting more involved in what's happening with Washtenaw County, getting more involved in what's happening in the communities that are around Northfield Township. The more you can learn, the more you learn how much you still have to learn. And I'm really looking forward to, identifying exactly what's out there and what we're missing. Like Marissa said, I'd love to get out there and mingle. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the next question, which will go to all the candidates again. What kinds of things do you think you will have to keep confidential with regard to township issues? And the first candidate to respond will be Marissa Prisgent.
My expectation is that anything that is sent to me that is confidential will be marked as such from the attorney. I know that most communication between a client, which would be anyone on the board, and an attorney is going to need to be kept confidential. I also know that there are times where there are closed sessions where that information might need to be confidential as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
Again, anything that is, really attorney-client privilege is confidential, or any emails marked confidential, conversations that, are told are confidential, needs to be held that way. So, and there's no, alteration of that. If it's confidential, it's confidential. It needs to, among the board, among whoever, is in that group that's allowed to share that information.
Thank you. Next candidate to respond will be LJ Walter.
In terms of my understanding of confidentiality, there's typically 2 categories. One is just overall legal and one is medical. I can't imagine this board coming into contact with a lot of medical records, so I'm assuming that one's right off. Anything legal, it's a really good thing that we pay a retainer for a township attorney. Obviously, like Marissa said, I would really hope that anything that needs to be, kept to myself should be noted as such. There's a certain level of judgment, I would imagine. If it's not labeled as confidential, I should be able to look at it and say, okay, well, this is obviously a legal document. This has to do with an ongoing court case. This is something that I should probably ask, hey, I'm assuming that this is going to just stay to me. There's a certain level of judgment, I think, even on things that aren't marked as such, being able to identify things that jump out as, maybe this should be sort of kept to me. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to answer will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. So 2 categories here. Anything personnel related, and that goes across all departments. divisions. Employees have a right to privacy in regards to their personnel matters, and those things will need to be kept private. And for the most part, the board should be unaware of. The township manager should be dealing with 90% of those things, if not the department heads for the departments that they are in. And then, of course, legal. And legal is those communications that are privileged, and they're privileged until such time that a majority of the board, meaning 4 board members, or the attorney see fit to make them no longer privileged. Once 4 board members decide that it is no longer something to be kept under attorney-client privilege, the board has a right to vote as to whether or not it is to be made public. Those are the 2 things I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
So I look at our attorney to tell us what we need to keep confidential in the best interest of the township. Before we go into confidential meetings with our attorney, I always ask, do we need to go into this meeting so we cannot share it at the public? Because the public obviously would like to know pretty much everything we do. And we have to keep things confidential to protect the township. And that's why we do it. And I take their lead on what they think needs to be confidential, again, to protect the interest of the entire township. And only after they say that the information can be released or a decision needs to be made to the public, to release to the public, do we do so.
Thank you. The next question is, what do you see as the major issues, including legal issues, facing Northfield Township in the next 4 years? And the first candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I can. What do you see as the major issues, including legal issues, facing Northfield Township in the next 4 years?
Okay. Interesting matter. One of the most challenging issues is going to be around what we do in our downtown Hamlet community area as far as the park is concerned and development. From a legal standpoint, while I certainly hope not, I believe there may be some legal matters as to processes and how things were handled in regards to the marijuana industry. I don't hope that upon us, but I think it is probably pretty likely that we will see something there. Outside of that, I would hope that this board, the new board, would be able to steer clear of legal wranglings by leaning heavily on our attorney and working to stick to the plans that we have in place and processes that we have put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Well, definitely in terms of issues, Ken touched on a couple there. Legalized marijuana, which is still obviously unprecedented a lot of places in the country. So we're still kind of like trudging our way through that at the moment. The downtown park, in terms of an issue, the conflict between development and conservation, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. It's a hot button for a lot of people, especially people who live in the agricultural areas. I don't see it as a legal issue, but it is definitely a hot issue. I think the board's going to have to sort of work with the entire township, and that's going to be a big obstacle. It's going to be a big thing that the township's going to have to work with. I agree with Ken. I hope against hope that there's not going to be any legal issues with any of the downtown development with marijuana businesses. It's possible, but I do think we have a really crackerjack attorney on our side. So hopefully not. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Lenore Zelenak.
So I think one major issue, and we've been discussing it for a while, is what to do with the area, the park area on Whitmore Lake. And I think we need more discussions with the residents because they do own that. It is theirs, and we need to get a consensus and ownership. I think when we get ownership and consensus from the people, they have buy-in, and then the issue is no longer an issue. I think we need to make decisions that we think are right. we need to get the data and we need to make them right, that are right. And that's the best we can do. And if people do not like our decisions, we will learn about them. I think development and preservation, again, I think we have a good master plan. We need to follow that master plan. And as long as we do that, I think the issues will not be there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
So yeah, the list of issues, again, a lot of this board started these, the downtown park, the wastewater treatment plant, 75 Barker, the marijuana businesses, and again, just growth of the township, residential, commercial, and tying that in with the land preservation, those are all going to be hot button issues. Hopefully, again, nothing, no legal matters will come up. But we have a lot of things started that we need to get finished that have been hanging out there for a while. And just working with different, with the planning commission, the zoning board, there just needs to be a little more, cohesiveness between all those. We kind of started that, we've talked about it, and again, that needs to get implemented so everybody's working together.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa President.
So when we're talking about the issues that this board is going to be facing over the next 4 years, I think everyone has pretty much hit on it at this point. But the important thing to understand is that a lot of those issues are going to be inherited. So when we're talking about completing the equalization basin at the wastewater treatment plant, that's going to need to happen with the new board. Growth in the downtown area, the seeds have been planted there. It's coming. So that's going to be something we need to continue to monitor. We need to facilitate the growth there based on the master plan. As long as we stay within the master plan, I think that we'll be headed in the right direction. I hope that there are no legal issues, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some coming our way from the business with the cannabis industry licenses. And I think as long as we stick to the master plan and really get the buy-in from the community over the next 4 years, we'll be able to accomplish these things, as well as streamline a lot of the processes for new boards to come.
Thank you. The next question. What sustainable funding source would you recommend to develop with amenities and annually maintain a community park of any size at North Village? And the first candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
I think the first thing we need to do is we need to determine the size of the park. The next thing we need to determine is the amenities in the park. It's hard to talk about funding sources when we don't know the cost. I will make that my goal as your treasurer to determine that. Then we can determine fund sources. Certainly there are grants available. I also think we do have a potential for funding it. We borrowed money to build the public safety building, and that bond will be up in 2 years. And we pay, the general fund pays $87,000 a year for that. That could be a potential source of income for that. But again, I think we need to determine the size, determine what we want, and then determine the cost, and then go out and see where the funding is. I do think there is funding available for amenities.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa President.
Can you repeat the question?
I can. What sustainable funding source would you recommend to develop with amenities and annually maintain a community park of any size at North Village?
Okay, that's what I missed a few words, but that's what I thought you said. Okay, so to me, the only way to create a sustainable funding source for that park with amenities is with the millage. I don't think that the township has the funds to just put out a bunch of money to give the people a park without getting their approval first. If we put it to the ballot and the voters say, this is what we want, then they need to know that that's going to increase their taxes, and they will know the exact amount when that ballot language is created. I certainly think that that would be great. I haven't seen any ballots proposal language being, any ballot language being proposed or in the works. But certainly if the voters want that to be an option, I would encourage someone to start a legal petition and get it going. As currently the board is in negotiations to sell that property to Livonia Builders, and without a clear-cut option to the contrary, that will probably end up going through. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Right. First of all, with the park, again, we need to decide what kind of park we want, how large, what kind of amenities we want. And once that's kind of decided or determined, we need to get a cost of it. I mean, we can't say where we're going to get money from if we don't know what's possible there or what it may cost. And after that, there's grant money out there. We've talked about grants. We could get it from there. The millage is possible. If people decide that they want a larger park, we might have to, approach the millage question. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes, but, you're not going to get something for free also. And again, the township doesn't have endless money. So again, the first questions are, what do we really want there and how large of a park? And what are we going to do with the rest of it if it's not all of a park?
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Thank you. I actually have two things to say about this. One, I won't mince words. I am for a park there, and I'm also for residences there. I do think that it's probably it makes the most sense in terms of how to fund a public park there, to have a third party from the outside fund it, develop it, and hopefully maintain it. I don't think we should be in a huge rush. I don't think, as a lot of people would say, once it's sold and gone, it's sold and gone. I think we should be able to entertain a few different ideas and find one that really suits us. The other thing I want to say about this is communication with the township. I think one of my biggest things about my campaign here is trying to increase communication with the township in a way that's effective and efficient. I think we should be able to put these plans in front of the community and have them decide whether this is what they want or not. And developing that kind of a format is probably the most important part of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you very much. Well, the Washtenaw County Parks has said they would help us in regards to getting a grant to design the park. I think the park design needs to be with the spirit of the park. We own 100% of the property. The spirit needs to be in trying to retain up to 50% of the property as a park. And then phased approaches. Hard structures need to go to the far east of the property. And like I said, a phased approach. I think Lenore spoke a little bit about funding sources for ongoing operations, but when you look at things like a play structure, something to that effect, there's a play structure at our elementary school. That play structure costs around $90,000, okay? We had a little bit more expensive than that because we had to put drainage in there, but just to give people ideas, let the Parks and Rec work with Washtenaw County, get a design in place with phased implementation, and then we can look at the dollars and cents of what it's going to cost and how to approach it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. What experience do you have in reviewing applications and interviewing applicants for jobs, and how will you apply this to your work as a board member? And the first candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
I do have management experience. I was in finance before my current position. So, interviewed people, hired people, fired people, definitely, not a new experience for me. Hiring and, for my own department, I've been through that. I've hired the election specialist. And then when other positions come up, they present, weeded through applications to the board that we, kind of give our yay and nay for. So, when it does come, across my, my table, I have no issue reviewing that and have done it, numerous times in the past.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Marissa Prisgent.
Thank you. I have management experience as well in restaurants. I've often been charged with having to hire people out of a stack of applicants, sometimes 10, 12 interviews a day to fill 1 or 2 spots. Additionally, I spent 4 years doing leadership development for Quicken Loans in which a large part of my job was actually training other leaders how to hire people and how to pick apart resumes and ask the good, tough questions to get the answers that they were actually after. Additionally, we really did deep dives into seeking to understand. So a lot of my experience would be knowing what follow-up questions to ask somebody to really get to the heart of whatever we were looking at. So certainly experienced in a lot of areas as far as hiring goes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. Well, I've done that, some of that in my current role. I've also owned a variety of different businesses of various different sizes. I've helped companies with talent acquisition and talent harvesting out of their existing employment pool. Certainly, that's something I'm well experienced with, but I would raise one concern, and that is outside of the clerk's purview and the treasurer's purview to hire their deputies. The township level, the township manager should really be doing the staffing of the township within the general township. Clearly, police and the chief brings forth their things for public safety, police and fire. But it really should be the role of the township manager bringing forth a recommendation to this board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Yeah, Ken definitely beat me to it. Yeah, the supervisor doesn't really, to my knowledge, do a lot of hiring aside from, like he was saying, maybe assigning a deputy. There's not really a whole lot of staff hires taking place. I mean, just if we're on the question, I mean, I've never had an especially fancy job, but I have managed to make my way into management in most of the jobs that I've ever had. I have had to conduct interviews, hire people, fire people. I think I'm a fairly good judge of character. I'm a fairly good judge of a person's intentions. I'm typically pretty good at seeing through the facade of what you typically see in an interview. So I think that I do have a particular talent for it, but at the same time, I just don't see myself using it all that often. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
Okay, Marta, would you please repeat the question?
I can.
Thank
What
you.
experience do you have in reviewing applications and interviewing applicants for jobs? And how will you apply this to your work as a board member?
Okay, thank you. My experience is, I think I was, as you may know, I worked at Ford Motor Company. I helped hire our current CFO, Mr. John Lawler. I knew when we hired him, he had great potential, and he certainly showed that. He was just announced, I think, a few days ago. Also, within the township, I was instrumental in hiring our current controller. I think she's done a fantastic job. I've also hired the current deputy treasurer as well. I think she's doing a fantastic job. So we may not have the opportunity all the time within our job positions at the township to hire people, but I think it is a good aspect to have. And maybe when different applicants within the offices come available, it might be good to have a couple of us interview the person as well, since we will be working with them. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what do you think can be done about the unevenness of internet connectivity throughout the township? And the first candidate to respond will be LJ Walter.
This is actually one of the most important things to me because I have worked remotely since I've lived in township. I've actually worked remotely, and I experience a fairly unstable internet connection fairly often. There are a lot of hoops I understand that you need to jump through, not only from the local level, but also on the federal level. There's a lot of interest when it comes to internet service providers. And they also operate a lot of really kind of what you might also call mini monopolies. I think there's a lot of navigation that you have to do. You have to kind of not only understand the map of how all of these conflicting interests work, but also how to navigate from point A to point B. It's an adventure. That's why it hasn't really happened yet, but it is an adventure that I specifically am looking very forward to going on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
I think one of the things that we need to leverage is an asset that we have, and that is we have some very major transportation trunk lines in our community, that people do travel. I do not think that laying cables or anything of that sort is the right approach. Clearly, wireless is our future, and connectivity along those trunk lines for travelers is important to the broadband providers that are out there today that are providing wireless services. So working with them to leverage that to really, I mean, in the rural areas, they are really crossed by some major transportation trunk lines. And I would like to see what the township could do to make it easier for those providers to be able to have the stations necessary in order to provide maybe a little bit wider net for internet services to allow individuals that live in the rural area connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
Certainly, this is for our residents and therefore concerned goals is that we need to work together. It's going to be a team effort. When I mean team effort, it's going to take the counties, us, all the townships working within Washtenaw County. It's going to take an effort to work with the legislators as well. I think we might have to think out of the box, as Mr. Dignan has mentioned. Maybe there's a different method we could use. But I do think, considering where we are in this day and age, and people working from home, children being taught at home, it really needs to be emphasized as an important amenity and a service that we need to provide our residents. And as I said, I think it's going to take a team effort to make sure we can do this. And I look forward to working with different members of our board, as well as different members of the community and the state legislators to get something to happen.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Marissa Prisgent.
So I don't know a whole lot about broadband. I know that it's an issue, and I know that as time moves on, internet access is going to become more and more important. I mean, it's getting to the point where there are children who aren't in school, who don't have access, who aren't getting the same opportunities of everybody else. So now it becomes an equality issue, and that makes it instantly important to me. So I think that the answer to this question is that our township needs to get involved with other agencies, because I do think that it is a bigger project than Northfield Township can solve by itself, and really do whatever we can to support this. Any votes that we can lend to support or buy into any investments in expanding access, I would be fully in support of.
Thank you. Next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
Yeah, again, I don't know the technicalities of all this, but it needs to be a group effort with the township, with other townships that are currently going through the same issue as we are, with the county level, the state level. I mean, with the different cable companies out there. So there's got to be some kind of answer out there on how to help our community. And again, especially just, you know, the rural areas that don't have any kind of broadband out there. So just a team effort and finding the right people, you know, to put in place, and just to get motivated and do it and just work together.
Thank you. The next question is, do you see health inequity and or poverty occurring in Northfield Township? And if so, what do you believe should be the role of the Township Board in addressing this? And the first candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
Yes, we see that being treasurer as well as being a board member of Northfield Human Services. We see the poverty within our township. And everybody needs access to health care. I think if you do that, you are going to save lives and save money in the long run, which I think is very important. As far as the township board, we do the poverty exemption. We may look at that to make sure it's adequate considering the times. We can support our local agencies such as Northfield Human Services, as well as People's Express for Transportation, because I think they do provide a great service to our community. And I'm not only saying that because I'm on the board, but I do think they fill a gap that the township doesn't fill, and maybe the county doesn't fill as well. and that's why they exist.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
Right. I think we need to promote the services that we do have. Northfield Human Services, the community center. There's individuals out there willing to help people. People's Express. The county has many different programs that they offer. There's Habitat for Humanity. You know, they do different projects for communities. So again, we just need to do that outreach and to get people involved so that they know that there are options out there. And again, if we have a one source, you know, again, like the website, the community center, someplace that they can go to get that information from, because there is help out there. We just need to make people aware of it.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Marissa Priscient.
Certainly, health inequity exists. Health inequity exists everywhere. The real question here is what can we do about it as a board? Now, as a local township board, I think it's important for the voters to understand that we're not writing legislation. We're not going to be passing universal health care. We're not going to be able to enact those kind of laws. We're here as a governing body over ordinances and local issues. However, that doesn't mean, I think everybody's pretty much touched on all of the great services that we already offer that I think we need to continue to support. This last board, there were several times that a lot of these great programs that we do have came under fire and we're in risk of losing funding for, such as People's Express and such as the cutting funding to the senior center, which I think is awful. So I would continue to support those programs, particularly the senior center with Meals on Wheels, as well as Northfield Human Services, and continue the great work that they're doing.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. Health inequity is a very, very big issue in Northfield Township. It's more of an issue than a lot of people seem to think. They don't see it on the surface. I've seen it up front and close because of the schools. I think one of the opportunities that exists is the township working closely with the schools to understand how it works there. But again, access to health care in general in this township is a struggle. And there's some folks working on that, but to know that there's a zip code in our township that has a infant mortality rate that is in line with Detroit is a little bit disconcerting, and it's a reality. We do have some obligation to be a part of solving the health inequity across our township. And I'd love to see our township step up and be a leader in that front. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be LJ Walter.
Thank you. This was a question that came up at the last Meet the Candidates event, and I kind of deflected away from it because this isn't a township issue. This is definitely a national issue. There's income inequality in our entire country. There's health inequality in our entire country, and it's not necessarily something that you can enact a policy to correct. I think a lot of it has to do with education in terms of not the income inequality portion of it, but the health inequality. Learning what a healthy lifestyle is. If you live in a township where the only place that you can get food is a small market or 3 or 4 fast food restaurants, I mean, you might not have a whole lot of exposure to a healthier lifestyle or a healthier diet. I think the important thing that we can do as a township is to have a unifying vision of what our township would look like with everybody healthy and successful, and then try to just divert our way in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more question, and then we'll have the candidates' closing statements. So the next question is, how do you intend to bring together the agricultural and Main Street communities, given that they both have valid concerns about how things are handled, but a seeming disconnect on the best way to go about it that's fair to both communities? So the first candidate to respond will be Marissa Priscient.
So I recognize this question and I still don't like it. Because I think that it implies some divisiveness that perhaps isn't as prominent as we might think. I am a perfect example. I live near the downtown area, very close to the township offices, and I serve on the township's land preservation committee. I actively represent both growth and preservation of our rural areas. And I think that a lot of people would, if they were educated on what exactly those words mean. Now, what I mean is people who want growth and development don't want to go and knock down people's farms and and build up big houses on those lands. They want to use the zoning that already exists. And I think that we should just, I mean, we're all neighbors. We all live in Northfield Township. We don't have to have this agricultural versus downtown stigmata that we have. And I think that this board could be the one to really knock those walls down, that old thinking. Thank you.
Next candidate to respond will be Kathleen Manley.
I agree with what Marissa said. I don't know exactly how big that divide is. And if we keep saying that, then people are going to believe that that divide is bigger than it probably really is. And again, just communication. We need to make sure the rural area knows what's happening downtown. If there is something, good happening, new stores, new something, let the rural people, be aware of what's going on down there. And same thing with, the downtown. If there's an event, something going on in the rural areas, just get the two to mesh together. I mean, our kids go to school together. They're, we don't have that, disagreement there. So just finding a way to bring them together and just to stop promoting that there is that, disagreement between the two, because it might not really be as big as everyone makes it out to be.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be LJ Walter.
I think the most important thing is collaboration. When you have a shared goal or a shared vision, I think that's what really helps bring people together. And a lot of it is just, we don't have, and again, I don't mean to say there's some excessive amount of divide, but I since I've lived here, I have noticed that it's kind of hard to ignore. I think when you have a common vision, that's what really brings people together, some kind of a shared event, seasonal events that can become traditions in a small township like this. I think probably the biggest thing, and I hate to keep harping back to the exact same point over and over again, but communication, having a place where we can collaborate, because I don't really have any specific personal place where I overlap in my life with somebody from the ag area. And so I don't really have a place where we would have a big discussion about what we want to see in the future. I think having a common place where we can come together and discuss what we're all looking for is probably the most important thing, so that we can collaborate on some things. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. That division that once existed, while it still may be out there in a small extent, I think the thing that heals that even more is focusing on the things that enhance the quality of life of those that live both in our rural and in our more dense residential hamlet area. And the way we do that is we put some money behind Parks and Rec to better connect our community. We give the Land Preservation Committee some seed money in order to allow them to educate the community on the benefits of certain land preservation. We have tremendous things that have happened in this township in regards to preserving open space. We have a beautiful preserve, if you haven't seen it. We have two actually in our township that could bring people together that are in our rural and our hamlet area to enjoy some really great things. So it comes down to enhancing everyone's quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to respond will be Lenore Zelenak.
I think it's important to be committed to our master plan. I think, again, that provides development where it should be and preservation where people want it to be. I think having a land preservation committee was a good step that this board had made, because I think the publication that we did and the communication we're doing from the land preservation committee is helping. I think we need some funding for land preservation. We fund other areas within the township. I think we fund the community center, which does a great service. I think the rural people might be looking for funding for their land preservation. I think communication is key to anything. We need to communicate to the rural residents as well as obviously to the people that aren't in the rural. And I think that becomes a challenge. I don't think a lot of the rural residents are on Facebook. I think that might be some of how do we reach them. I think getting the newsletter out in the tax bills, not that that's the best place to put news of good things in the township with your tax bill.
Thank you. The next thing we're going to do is have candidate closing statements, and these will be in alphabetical order by last name, in reverse alphabetical order. So we will start with Lenore Zelenak.
I would like to thank the opportunity for this forum. I always enjoy talking to the people, and I hope if they have any questions, they will contact me. Again, I'm rerunning for treasurer. I have some goals that I think we've talked about here. I'd like to continue to push for a park on Whitmore Lake. I think it's important to work with our state reps and the county to get internet, because I think that's very important. I think we need to streamline the business and building processes. I think, again, we need to be committed to our master plan. I have lived here with my husband for 26 years. I volunteer within our community to make it better because I truly enjoy being a resident, and I'm very honored to be your treasurer, and I'm honored to be running again. And I would ask that you would vote for me again as your treasurer. Even though I may not have an opponent, I would appreciate your vote. And I look forward to continuing to move Northfield Township forward.
Thank you. Next candidate to speak will be LJ Walter.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself again here tonight, and thanks to everyone else who spoke this evening. It's great to keep the community informed and involved, especially as one of my biggest goals in the township is to see that everyone in the township has their voice in the government expanded, and to make use of the technology available to us in this day and age for the betterment of communication within the township. I'm looking forward to being here through it the whole time, whether as the township supervisor or elsewhere. You're not really getting rid of me anytime soon. Thank you again to MARTA for organizing and moderating this event, and to Living Water Church for donating their Zoom account and their technical service. And again, no matter who you're voting for, either locally or otherwise, please just remember to vote. There is still time to register and to get a last-minute absentee ballot. If you need more information on how to do so, please go to michigan.gov/vote. If you can't hear me, it is right here and it is backwards, but it is michigan.gov/vote. Please go there, please register, please vote in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Marissa Priscient.
I'm asking for your vote. I want to do my part to help lead Northfield forward too. My number one goal is to represent the citizen of Northfield Townships in their interests to the best of my ability. The Board of Trustees is not a place for one member's grandiose goals, but it's a place for 7 people to come together and work as a team to move Northfield forward. When elected, I promise to support all legal businesses by recommending and supporting policies that will expedite approval processes. I will recommend and support a concise communication plan, which will outline exactly when and how Northfield Township will communicate with its constituents about the issues that impact their lives. I will volunteer to work on a subcommittee to improve the content and accessibility to the township website so that citizens are easily able to find the information that they need to participate. I'll facilitate progress by keeping party politics out of the boardroom, and I will absolutely represent my constituents without a personal agenda. Thank you for watching tonight.
Thank you. Next candidate to speak will be Kathleen Manley.
Hello, again, Kathleen Manley, rerunning for clerk, Republican candidate, currently, clerk, and just asking for your vote again to finish a lot of what we started and to start some new projects and to get new people in place and the right people in place to get this township running smoothly and properly and the way it should be. Feel free to reach out to me. Again, thanks to LJ for the little clerk's plug. Go to michigan.gov/vote, all kinds of information. Feel free to call the clerk's office, email us, come into the office. Again, absentee ballots are available. So if you need anything, please call us. And again, please vote for me, Kathleen Manley, Republican clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate to speak will be Kenneth Dignan.
Thank you. I'm Ken Dignan, running for Northfield Township Supervisor as a Republican. I want to thank MARTA and Living Water for making this forum possible. It's real simple. I want to lead Northfield forward. And to do so, I have an action plan that is deeply rooted in enhancing the quality of life of the existing residents with our existing tax dollars. I will champion the design and investment in the North Village Lakefront Park. I will push forward and ask the board to fund Parks and Recreation Board with $10,000 of additional seed money to actually put things in place and show what their vision can be. I will support the master plan, both growth and preservation. I will push to give some funds to the Land Preservation Committee, additional seed money of $10,000 to run an educational campaign. And I will push for us to save tens of thousands of dollars from leaving our community and instead have someone who's vested in our community be our planner. Thank you, and please vote.
This concludes the Northfield Township Board candidates for Supervisor, Clerk, and Treasurer Forum. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating. Please note that a Facebook page has been set up where a recording of this event will be posted by tomorrow. The name of the page is Northfield Township Board Candidates 2020. Feel free to direct anyone who missed this forum to that page. Information directing people to that page will be posted on area social media sites. Please be informed that I am working with the Northfield Township Area Library to offer a workshop entitled Your Local Government on Saturday, October 17th at 1:00 p.m. This is your chance to learn about the responsibilities of township board members, ask questions about local government, and learn how citizens can get involved. Registration information is available on the library website at www.ntal.org. I'd also like to thank the public for their interest in the election and remind everyone that the election date is Tuesday, November 3rd. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Every registered voter in Michigan is entitled to vote absentee if they wish. Absentee ballots can be obtained and returned at the Northfield Township Clerk's office Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. or on Saturday, October 31st between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Absentee ballots are available now. If you request an absentee ballot but don't receive it, contact the Northfield Township Clerk's office. If you plan to vote absentee and don't want to return your ballot by mail, there's a secure drop box available at the Northfield Township Hall that's accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For more information, contact the Northfield Township Clerk at 734-449-2880. And thanks everyone for participating. Good night.